This is IBM Museum, and yet another box on the bench. We're going to do unboxing here. I also am aware by the tracking number and the box size of what is inside, and I think that this is going to be interesting as well. So let me get the webcam off so we do not have the different phased appearances of myself as I move around between the two camera sources. And Wayne, I'm not familiar with what Wayne Dalton is. There appears to be some talks about springs and things like that enclosed. It's missing. Just a reuse of the box, whatever Wayne Dalton is. Maybe somebody can inform me of what that company does, or I'm assuming the company was named after the founder of that. And we have some peanuts inside. We do have a packing shipping information on here, but I can probably go through and it's not even a bad total. Just a thank you and a little kind of a little scrawl of a or mark of a signature, and just on the information on a half sheet there. Now we do have the styrofoam peanut, even the ones that do not degrade over time. I can go through and put those in my peanut package, and this is going to be really nice for all that. Let's get the box aside. Careful not to spill the peanuts. And so this is what we have. Get that ring light toned down a little bit. Although undoubtedly we'll still see a little bit of reflection, see just reflection from everywhere and the overhead lights and everything. But IBM token ring, network PC adapter, and then of course in French is what it looks like. Looks like in German. And then Italian or Spanish. Farah. And I mean, that's Spanish to me. Could be corrected. Kind of the same sort of print, barcode. We can see mold, you know, that's probably on the beneath the plastic, but looks in real good shape, and it's shrink wrapped all around. So we're ultimately, and then we got the little umbrella, of course. Probably signifying not to get it wet, and then kind of the packaging to have where we can see the inside here. So it's going to be exciting enough this to open this in probably you know, it could be a while. It could be even as long as 40, close to 40 years. Well, 35 maybe more likely, but definitely it's you know, it's got some time on it. And there was, the seller had a group of these, and I maybe even went through and pictured one that was, I didn't know whether I was going to see it where it was open, and who knows, you know, a surplus of why things are saved away like this. I mean, it's better than being discarded, of course, in the grand scheme of things. And of course, when I pull, it's always the thing of the other end. If I had it pierced, it could probably be some sort of whistle or harmonica or something else that would make a sound. And then even further, once we get it from that external packaging, and that's, you know, pristine. That cardboard may have a little bit of mold on it and stuff like that, but that styrofoam is absolutely clean. And so we're getting to see these things, even for 5 1/4 inch diskette, guide to operation. That's for the Token Ring Network PC adapter hardware reference library, a guide to operations. And I'm looking here for publication dates. We even have the warning talking about disconnecting power. Okay, so related publications, and I'm getting and it's not of course it's not a mildewy kind of smell or anything like that. It's kind of like even the binder itself, it's that old smell. It's what you smelled from your grandparents' furniture or something like that. It's okay. So you need IBM personal computer disk, operating system DOS version 3.2 or equivalent. So we know by the time frame of that, of talking about 3.2 or equivalent, we kind of know that 3.2 was released, probably not 3.3, and that would probably place it in because I think DOS 3.3 came out about the release of the PS2s in 1987, so maybe we're talking 85 or 86 for that. Let me see if, okay, Google. Well, my assistant's offline or something else, and hopefully I didn't set it off for anybody else watching the video. But there's and I had seen this diagram even before too. There's the adapter. It talks about the extra memory on there. We'll get to look at the adapter because I'm really interested in what this adapter has to it. There's the diskette. Talks about the diskette that's included with the set and what you need. And talks about even the different adapters. So IBM personal computer, an IBM industrial computer with at least 256 kilobyte of memory. The adapters will work in the following computers as illustrated in the chart below. So there's the listing of the various systems. And type 3 media filter, and of course we've covered the media filters in the a prior video. Okay. So, you know, referring to the IBM AT and things like that, you know, we're talking 85, 86 time frame. And then some of the industrial computers. Saying the switches. And I think, well, I'm not really sure if this manual will get scanned if it's not already. Here's your primary alternate. Opening up the case. Even talks about the key lock for the AT. And there's your token ring network PC adapter and adapter 2. So there's the adapter 1 on top there, and here is the adapter 2. And it looks like just about the only difference that really seems to be marked is the extra, that so-called extra memory. So, and it talks about on the packaging just being the adapter. I'm not with the look to see if it's adapter or the adapter 2. Okay. And putting it in the system, installing the adapter slide or the support bracket in the front. And here's even, there's cabling. It talks about the dot. Even showing that DB9 to the Type 1 connector. And diagnostic. Loading the adapter diagnostic. And I can probably get that ring light kind of turned up again. And just all the special key functions and the menu sequence for the diagnostic. Even has a little bit of color print in there. That's green for me, but it shows up as black for you. It's kind of interesting. There's more green. Wow. And it shows up as kind of a lighter black. But some really interesting stuff that'll be for the scanning, saying the read-only memory ROM. There's your map, your IO map, or memory map, excuse me. Kind of a nice little handy chart. And your abbreviations. And then there's the business reply card. Do we have still was looking for a date on there. Right down to North Carolina. So that styrofoam has kind of the inset of for the manual, and we will go through and do the seal for the and it might be even worth it for me to get another one of these, because I may want to go through and pick up one for a little bit of a tear down too. And we'll go into that as I open up the packaging here. Just trying to cut between the two layers, get it and really for all that, you know, let's talk about the shrink wrap. I'm not really worried about an adapter. There's not any point where this is going to become like a valuable thing just because it's sealed. It's kind of interesting for that big label of the FRU part number. We even have in the, it's got an arrow. I guess it goes in, inserted into the and so there's your compartmentalized, and with the adapter support there, you know, still getting into different FRUs and everything else that could be, that these styrofoam containers were. And I mean, while the packaging, it's not going to increase in value or anything else, I'll save the packaging. It's not going to get thrown out. It's interesting for the PC bracket otherwise, poking out, having to poke out. And for all that packaging again, this thing is effectively brand new. We're the first ones touching this in a matter of decades. At least 3 decades. And so we get to see kind of that older IBM style in a way. And really for this, that extra memory area is unpopulated. So this would be the adapter 1. If I'm reading by all the differences otherwise between these. Now this is no green dot, surprisingly. And it didn't fall off. I mean, there's no place for it to fall off in. Even though the labels, a lot of time they lose their stickiness. But it does have the marking that IBM typically did on early token ring adapters. And as I've seen a lot of the other token ring adapters, they have the made in Canada marking. Now this is a 4 megabit adapter. And at least the ROMs are socketed here. It's good to do a good view of those. So 69X7769 and 69X7770. The odd and even. I'm even surprised in a way that they're not marked with another way. Now, for the discrete components of the token ring, and that they did go through, and I don't know if this is pre-TROPIC or not. And I'll get to that description in a moment. Let me show the other adapter, and then I can probably get in talking about the TROPIC. And there may be where I'll uncap some of these heat sinks. They come off easy. But let me pull out the other. And it's funny for the green color, and even have to see that there's not really any room for silk screening information about the component identification on them. Very similar, because this is the 8-bit equivalent of the microchannel board. And this is the so-called long adapter. And it's a 4 megabit, has the green dot in this case. Made in Canada once again. In fact, that one, it's even interesting. It looks like I'm missing the knurl for the thumb screw. That's fine. I've got others of this board, and I'll go through. Actually, I'm looking at. I've got one that's effectively a salvage board that I'll be looking at sending out, and we're going to see if we can do some disassembly. Now, these have the different so-called silver cap chips around, and it's got even some, CPUs and, well, processing capability. I don't want to really get in over my head and say CPUs. But there's a Motorola. And so for this being microchannel, it is documented at the Arden tool. I'm on the 4 megabit page right now, and I can put that link in the description. And then it's got some interesting little side links here. But there is the so-called long adapter. And it doesn't have any component identification on it because it just is that marking. Now, comments are made that it's almost like this is a IBM, when it typically did an initial board, and sometimes there's boards that they did in this manner, the adapters, and a lot of time it was a brown PCB, wasn't necessarily a green, like a lime green PCB like that one is. And even it's surprising for these are actually jumper pins on there. It's real interesting the way it's constructed. Now, this for the separate silver cap chips and processing capabilities and RAM and other things on this, and then of course as it goes, that's the boot ROM location. And even for the 8-bit adapter, it's got that boot ROM position as well. But these are going to share a lot of the components. In fact, the processors that are there, these resistance network between them. We'll have to see if the equivalent for these two chips here, of whether those are under these big heat sinks otherwise here. And for the description on the Ardent tool, this so-called U5 that has the heatsink, I've actually gone through on one adapter and I've popped the heat sink off of it, so further identification could be made of this. Now, the separate kind of distinct components that we have there, I don't know if this is a prelude or actually the chipset that IBM referred to as TROPIC. And TROPIC was later released to other manufacturers, had National Semiconductor a lot of the time going through and producing chips that the other manufacturers used to emulate or mimic the IBM chipset that it used on Token Ring. And we're going to go through, let's go back. I guess I have a back button here. I'm not on my OBS where I'm showing the page here. Although I could. I mean, it's I'll provide the links at least. And on the 16.4 adapter page, there is a link to the TROPIC chipset and some of the things that I'm referring to here. And it talks about those components. Let me actually get flipped around. Because I mainly wanted to do a little bit of talk over the TROPIC chipset. At what point that was maybe done, whether it was as far back as the 4 megabit. I'm sure that there's probably the concept of this TROPIC chipset was produced, and going through and labeling the components of it. I'll include the link in the video description. So here we even see the TROPIC microcode odd and even, as we've seen those EPROMs that they even had for the TROPIC chipset. They had Reef and Pele for the names basically of those chip portions. And they talk about here, you know, it's even interesting to see the ISA only, and maybe that's referring to the 8-bit adapters or the full 16-bit, you know, ISA adapter effectively there. So on this page, it just goes through and it does a listing. I'll get talking about the part numbers and these listings of Pine Grove and Pine Grove Shrink. And I can probably go through and just briefly show that up on the screen too. So here they even talk about if the card ID is E001 or E000. So the E000 is the 4 megabit per second adapters, microchannel adapters. E001 is the 16.4 megabit adapters, able to do 16 megabit per second or participate in a 60 megabit per second ring or a 4 megabit per second ring. So this identifies that there are TROPIC adapters that are even the 4 megabit. And that would be, in fact, it's going to be a lot of stepping through, I think. I was wanting to look at time too as I go through. And I'll be talking about some of these later on, some of these OEM TROPIC chipset list. In fact, there's some particular chipsets out there with IBM FRUs on them that are the TROPIC chipsets that I'll be showing. And but you know, it's having the link there is going to be an excellent resource. Now, in particular, and I'll do this link before going through and showing this on the camcorder view of the other adapter I have. But so great guy to follow out in the electronics world. And I do on my, I follow him. This is this blog link, and certainly with the link I'll include in the video description, you can go through and see the blog entries, and also he's Ken's on Twitter to and does a lot of things there. And so here he's going through for the ISA, one of the ISA adapters, and I've even shown this one on a previous video of going through the chipset and everything else, and he's going through and disassembling, going through, talks about all the silver cap chips, and goes through and just starts looking at the insides, how these chips are fabricated, and what they have to them, even the die views and all the interconnects of how they're constructed, and even shows other pictures of another style chip. In fact, it's even interesting before he gets down further here that inside the chip shows a little breakout of that. And I'll go through and show, just as that ISA adapter with that single silver cap chip, I'll kind of show the element there. But this shows the breakdown of the different TROPIC components as well. Even shows that's what's on this one chip for for this. And I really wanted to scroll down further to the, okay, and there's talking about the CPU and how much that has to it. Really very detailed, going through, and talks about the, originally IBM originally made the token ring chip in 1988, and the chip I examined is a smaller version from 1994. So on the left there, it's showing the older chip, and then on the right for the chip that he went through and disassembled. And for all that, and the it's also even another, and I go through and follow this Antone on Twitter as well, producing some very interesting content. But over on the left, it's known as the Pine Grove, and then on the right, that Ken went and disassembled for his, that's known as the Pine Grove shrink version, since they shrunk the die of that. And I'm laying out right now of all the timeline basically for all these chips, trying to come up with when each chip and the versions, even the EEPROM versions that are on there. There's another view of the ISA adapter pre-disassembly, and then there is a close-up of the die showing that Pine GR, and again meaning Pine Grove, and then SH over a little bit from that underneath that IBM symbol of the shrink, meaning SH meaning the shrink version. So, but a very elaborate breakdown. He's got notes and references, and you can find his link. It's worth reading over the page. And as it is, as I scroll to the top here, and I'll go through and I can go through and hide the page effectively, get back in the camcorder view. So he was going through and tearing down. In fact, this is the 5.0. So this is effectively in the microchannel form, and this is the Pine Grove shrink chip that he went through and looked at. Whether I have to turn down my ring light again for the shine on that, but IBM went through and they reduced. They probably had the separate TROPIC components here, and went through and effectively getting all that into, or most of that, into the single silver cap chip. And so I'm going through, and I'm actually going to be sending one of these adapters to Ken, and as well as some later ones, even with the other kind of the intermediary single chip versions. And we're looking at other code names out there besides the Pine Grove and the Pine Grove shrink. There's some earlier ones there's Spyglass and there's Azores, that we're looking for those chip versions, and whether that's shown on the die of these once they're disassembled. And so I'll be sending a package of these to Ken for all that. But I was wanting to mainly see, and probably for the this 8-bit adapter, I'll go through and I'll put the heat bit, kind of look and compare the chip values, to just get an understanding that of how close in relation that these were produced. Now, I want to hold up the camera because even I'm not so sure. So in the microchannel board, those are socketed in place, the EEPROMs. And then on the 8-bit board, they're socketed at least. And of course, I'll go through and read those. And even though I have other adapters, I'm probably just going to let the professionals. Ken doesn't have an EEPROM reader, but we can get these read. Curious Mark can go through, and he's got the means once the components get pulled off, or at least the that can be examined. If they have any code names or they're part of the separate TROPIC components that are out there, and to see if they have code names printed in them. And then these are very similar. There's even there's a long board that does have a separate, the main silver cap chip, and has a separate one, almost like a driver, transmit and receive or something like that, that's off close to the connector. But that's on the schedule in the upcoming months. We can get some of these adapters. What else did I pull out? Oh yeah, these are some of the intermediate adapters. This still, I'm trying to see. Okay, so this is, whereas the other one was the Pine Grove, the Pine Grove Shrink, this is the Pine Grove here. That, 02, no, excuse me, this is an earlier chip. It has a separate silver cap. Is this the Pine Grove? 51, no, that's still not the Pine Grove. I've got samples of the full Pine Grove on the adapters I'll be sending to Ken as well. But all these having different microcode versions, stuff like that. I've gone through and read a lot of these, and doing a compilation. I'll probably try and start figuring out versions and things like that. But just getting the package ready to go through and see what what details he can find out under that, looking down with that metallurgical microscope that he has, and looking for pictures and everything else they can do. And he's welcome to tear down the stuff that I send him as far as he wants to do it. It's those are his. I've got other versions of that, but I'm going to go through and examine this a little bit more. As I say, I'd probably like to have one complete, but if chips don't match up and things like that, going through and eventually having one of these, because there still seems to be a few around, having one of these also disassembled and do a comparison of chip code names or versions or whatever else under the microscope reveals. So this unboxing got to be probably quite a bit of a longer video. Still not too bad. We're going over 40 minutes here. And of course I need to go through and follow up the timestamps on some of these videos and things like that to where get to the where people can drill to a particular section. But I'll try to include all the links that I talked about in the video description, and people can go through and look those things over and look over Ken's blog and see what amazing details he's pulled out of these as well. And he'll get an opportunity to get a lot more of these adapters and delve in. And from the token ring adapters, we just have to see where things go from there. There's a lot of other stuff that that needs investigating at that level, and but all in due time, I guess. So if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click on that link button, please. I certainly enjoyed describing that and going over and touching this adapter for the first time in decades. It's kind of neat for me to go through and break shrink wrap and pull things out. And you know, there's a thought with this too. I want a complete adapter, besides one being disassembled, to go through and put it on the appropriate machine and going through some tests and everything else. These things are not for the capacitors and other things on there. They should not have any degraded value. I can do at least a diagnostic and things like that as well, just to look through some details on the software side and see how they perform, and just go with it. But you know, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. There's always going to be things like this that come out on the channel, and recommend it to your friends if they are interested in this sort of content too. But this is IBM Museum. That's all I have for now. Thank you.